Actor James Woods was the guest on Later with Bob Costas on April 22nd, 1992. And he talks at length about two subjects. His first real film role in The Way We Were, and how adept he was of getting on screen even though he wasn't supposed to be in the shot. And he explained he did that out of pure intelligence, planning, thinking. And he talks at length about his upbringing of being a nerd and always learning and building his intelligence. And that's been the mark of James Woods. And he ends the interview, and it's part one of a two-parter. Tomorrow you'll get the one from the next night. He talks about how there's different types of people. And this is all right before the Sean Young incident became public. So I think he's really foreshadowing his thought process and argument with the Sean Young stalking weirdness. So you've probably seen some of the Sean Young interviews on my channel. She talks about it. It's kind of cool watching them go at it 30 years ago. So enjoy this episode of Later with Bob Costas. Yes, I am driving. No, I'm not touching the goddamn phone. I'm paying total attention to the road. I promise. I'm not looking in that phone. No.
Thanks for staying up later. James Woods is with us. He's in the motion picture, as you doubtless know, Straight Talk with Dolly Parton. We'll talk about that a bit later. Let's just start arbitrarily, though, with something that might surprise some people. Many people in our audience have seen The Way We Were,
right.
But you weren't well known then, so they probably missed you as someone in several scenes with Streisand, right?
I don't actually have they could miss me because, in fact, I had 5 lines in the picture. And I was supposed to work a day, and I ended up working like 10 days on the picture. Because every time Streisand had a shot, I'd just like wander in behind her. I was like the world's most like assertive extra, basically. And Sidney Pollack said to me once, he said, "I cannot believe every time I look at dailies, you are in the shot." He said, "How do you manage to be in every scene and I don't notice it?" And there was a time they were doing a close-up once of Barbara, and Sidney said, "Where's Woods?" And they said, he's back at his hotel room. And he said, "Okay, good, we can get this shot." He gets his shot,
right.
lo and behold. The operator says, "Yeah, it's really great. Barbara's there." And then I see Jimmy right behind him. I kind of like rack back to him. And so I just found a way to sort of come up. And there was a scene where the first time Barbara and Robert Redford sort of, where she's trying to get his attention in a library. And she's sort of reading her book and looking at him. It's a whole scene about sort of looking and not looking at each other. And, you know, it was a silent scene, essentially. And really kind of beautifully structured because she's looking at him, and then he kind of glances over and doesn't pay much attention to her, and she's very shy and so on. I said, "Sidney, I should be in this scene." He said, "Jimmy, let me explain something to you." He said, "Okay." He said, "You, with all due respect, are nobody with a capital N, and this is Barbara Streisand and Robert Redford, and they're falling in love in a love story movie for the first time. You don't need to be in the scene. Trust me on this." I said, "I think I should be in the scene. Seriously, I think I should." So then I go to Barbara and I say, "Barbara," I said, "You know about like objectives and acting and so on?" And she's a wonderful, instinctive actress. And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, if you're like really nervous about looking at Redford because you have this crush on him and he hasn't noticed you yet and so on, it'd be tougher if your boyfriend were right there, because you're looking up at him and then you notice your boyfriend looking at you and you're not sure. And of course, I'm your boyfriend in this, even though I have this little tiny part, but I am your boyfriend in this sequence. So maybe I should be in the scene." She goes, "It's like this triangle scene, of course, you know." And it turned out to be actually a wonderful experience. And years later, Sidney Pollack and I, he was the director and I was the actor at the American Film Institute, one of these big seminars. And I didn't think Sidney remembered any of this. And Sidney, of course, is a wonderful actor as well and a terrific guy. And the whole seminar was about, you know, it was a lot of young actors and directors and how to sort of make your mark in cinema. And he said, if there's anybody to learn this from, it's the guy sitting on the stage with me. He said, because he would find a way to hustle his way into every scene. And he said, as much as I resented it, you know, at the time, like pretended that I resented it, he said, in fact, I probably used every frame of him. He said, because it worked. There's a, if you ever watch The Way We Were again, I don't know if that's, I'm sure it's on video, and you rent it, there's the scene where Redford dances with her for the first time. And we had like 1,000 extras, and it was late in the day, and they really had to get this shot. And Sidney said, "Okay." Said, "She's dancing with Jimmy, And Robert Redford comes in, taps him on the shoulder, and they start dancing. And it was a 360 where the camera goes all the way around them, and they were feeding extras under the cable, and it was like a really complicated shot. He said, and they worked out the shot for hours. And he said, okay, everybody gets on the bullhorn. Then he said, this is really a difficult shot. Everybody has to do things exactly right. And I'm not only asking, I'm praying. Jimmy, when he taps you on the shoulder, right, that the camera operator went off onto me standing there alone, sort of like pulling my hair and kind of like, and walking off and everything. And Sidney used it. And the point of it all is that, in fact, of course, it was a tongue-in-cheek game between Sidney and me about you know, kind of battling my way in to be seen. But he, in fact, did use it. And it was a very valuable lesson, because if you play as an actor, if you really play what your intention is, I mean, I really wasn't trying to scene steal. I mean, I was her boyfriend, and here's this good-looking guy is like cutting in on me, and I'm a communist, and he's just some jock, and you know, that was what the storyline was about, and so on. And I have a great deal of disregard for who his character is. My guy would not sort of put up with it, you know, so I kind of played out the intention, and it's when I very early on learned, you know, to sort of stick to your character guns, as it were. Wonderful script by Arthur Lawrence, but, you know, I think that would have been the intention.
But where did the gumption come from? It's one thing for you to do it now, or even a few years after that, but you're a relative rookie.
Oh, yeah, it was my first movie, actually. First Hollywood movie. I'd done a small, like, independent thing before that. I remember the very first day on the set, I was standing, they said, okay, they were doing a montage sequence, which was the title sequence of the movie, and all of a sudden I was supposed to be standing with Barbra Streisand putting posters up on this statue or something. Nobody introduced me or anything. There's, I'm not kidding you, 10,000 people watching, because we're shooting up at, in Schenectady, up at Union College. And they said, okay, who's playing Frankie? Jimmy, come over here. So now I'm standing next to Barbra Streisand, all these people watching, and nobody's introduced us, and I'm standing there. And she looks at me and she says, you afraid of me? And I said, no, what are you, joking? And she started laughing. She said, what do you mean? I said, why should I be afraid of you? I said, once I say action, it's every man for himself, and I don't have any problems. You know what I mean? And of course, Barbara really admires people with gumption, you know what I mean? She said, you're not joking, are you? I said, no. I said, you're a great singer, but I'm like a great actor. You know, I mean, I was like a kid, you know, like, you know, that kind of hubris that now I, believe me, do not have, you know, having learned how tough this business is. But at the time, I was just too young and innocent to know any better, so I just kind of, you know, stood up and did it. I think I had more gumption then, actually, than I do now.
A kid with only a couple of acting lessons under his belt, right?
Well, actually I had one acting lesson, one acting class I went to. I went to HB Studios, and Bill Hickey was teaching the class, a wonderful guy. We became friends, but I had two classes. He asked me to do the To Be soliloquy from Hamlet. Nice start, right? Now, I'd done like 36 plays in college in summer stock before then. So to me, it was kind of like I'm here and, you know, I'm going to like study acting. I had done it so much, I felt like George Burns or something, you know. So I figured, okay, I'll take this acting class. So that's the first class, and then he assigns it. The second class, I come in and do it, and I finish it, and Bill Hickey says to the class, okay, any thoughts? You know, so now I'm like paying for Bill Hickey to listen to a bunch of like people who've never been in a play in their lives telling me about, you know, Hamlet, right? And I swear to you, the first kid sort of raises their hand and says, you know, it was very well presented and so on, but I didn't get what Hamlet had for breakfast that morning. And I said, you know, you're joking, right? Like, who cares what Hamlet had for breakfast this morning? You know what I mean? It was like all that method crap. And I said, look, this isn't going to work for me. I got to tell you, I mean, I got more important things to do. You know, I mean, I can't sit here and discuss what Hamlet had for breakfast. What are you, nuts? You know, and that was sort of the end of my acting days, you know, my acting class days.
You think maybe part of it was that it wasn't a lifelong dream for you to be an actor? Like, as I get it, you wanted to be a doctor. And you were a real good student, and you went to MIT, and later you become an actor. And maybe if it isn't a thing where at 5 or 6 years old you're imagining that you're on the silver screen like Clark Gable, maybe you're less awed by it.
Probably. I had a friend growing up in the neighborhood I was in who wanted to be an actor. I don't think he wanted to be Clark Gable. I mean, he used to go around throwing a boa over his shoulders singing, you know, something from Wildcat, pretending he was Lucille Ball. So maybe that may have had something to do with the fact that it didn't, you know, work out for him to do the sequel to The Misfits, but or Gone with the Wind, but you know, and all compassionate joking aside, I think those people who do sort of stand in their rooms and sing "There's No Business Like Show Business" when they're 8 years old, I think somehow maybe they have the wrong priorities. You know, I mean, like I talk to young actors now, or young aspiring actors, and they'll say, "Yeah, I got the right connections, and you know, I really want to be rich and famous and so on." I'm going, are you interested like in how people think, or like observing human nature, or, you know, I mean, I love to act, and I guess it's one of the reasons I'm even though I sort of played these big, like leading roles and stuff, I mean, I always think of myself as a character actor, obviously, and nothing to do with character versus leading man or that, but I mean, you know, Meryl Streep is a character actor. You know, Robert Redford, believe it or not, is a wonderful character actor. And, I mean, you think of him as a leading man, but he's great when he plays those sort of offbeat character types, you know. I'm just interested in how people think. You know, the foibles of human nature always intrigue me.
Before I forget, since we were talking about the character you played in The Way We Worked,
right.
By appearance, that character seems to line up with a description of you offered by your brother in a GQ article some time ago. He said as a kid, you were a nerd. Slick back hair, white socks, skinny tie, locked up in the room, reading books, shy. Was he exaggerating for dramatic effect, or did he have it on the money?
The only thing missing today is the white socks and the tie. I mean, I'm still the same. I mean, I sit around my house, you know, I read a lot. I'm a nerd. I mean, I've just always been sort of a nerd, which I find, you know, pretty obvious, you know, sort of blatantly obvious to the most casual observer, as we used to say at MIT. And it's never really changed. I've been lucky enough to play sort of bizarre parts that are really fun to play that no actor would ever think of turning down, you know. So people think of me sometimes, you know, in a different way, but I'm really a big-time nerd. And proud of it, by the way. I'm proud of that fact, that I've, you know, managed to wrangle, you know, this kind of celebrity in a different way, contravening all, you know, obvious empirical evidence that I am in fact a nerd.
Back with James Woods. So your brother describes you as having been a nerd as a kid.
Right.
So it's really an interesting twist that there's a sense of danger about you, real or perceived,
right,
that actually makes people uncomfortable while you're sitting there thinking, I'm a nerd.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of funny, but if, you know, if they want to, you know, react that way, it's like, you know, it's just fodder. You know, the press basically is just, yeah, I mean, well, there's two presses in this country. There's the real press and the trash for cash press, which is, you know, proliferating. It's not just tabloids, but, you know, all
and they're intersecting now, by the way.
Yeah, which
the
is pretty sad.
distinction's being blurred.
Yeah, which is pretty sad. I mean, for the first time in the history of this country, you know, people are reading news and relying on it that's sold to the newspapers. I mean, you know, somebody sells their story for $400,000. You think they're like, maybe not a reliable source, you know. I mean, it's ironic, the William Kennedy Smith trial, no matter what your opinion may be of who was right or wrong in that, or who was telling the truth or not. It's interesting that the Scopes Monkey trial was covered by H.L. Mencken. The Eichmann trial in Jerusalem was covered by Hannah Arendt. And the main sort of media figure at the William Kennedy Smith trial was a current affair. Mm-hmm. I mean, so what does that say about, you know, the news media now, you know? And it's sad because the really good writers and reporters, really good journalists, I just was talking to a guy named Jonathan Greenberg for the Roy Cohn thing. He's a really good writer, you know, he's clearly an intelligent man. And, you know, like a Denise Worrell, who writes for Time magazine, she's a wonderful writer. It's a shame these people really work hard to, you know, to write about, whether it be entertainment industry or anything else. It's a shame that they're being undermined by the trash for cash kind of, you know, and they're just proliferating, and they're owned by big corporations, you know. I mean, you know, the really scum ones, you know, whether it be, you know, like all those, I don't even know the names of them, but they're always on like at 7 o'clock, you know,
right,
or something, you know, on television, and, you know, and the ones that have just a patina of respectability but are really scummy, you know, like the Us's and the Peoples and all that stuff. They're really trash magazines, you know. They're starting to blur over the edges, and it's too bad because people think they're getting, you know, the news, and they're not. You know, they're getting paid for stories.
Is there any misconception out there, and believe me, I'm not driving at a particular because I don't know what the particulars are, is there any misconception out there about you that you would, if you could, maybe not devote your life to, but if there was a button on that side of the room, you'd get up out of the chair, walk over, push the button to erase that misconception?
No, not really. I think I've always been very lucky, you know. I really pretty much respond to how my well, I guess this is I don't know if this is the right word, but how my fans approach me, you know. You know, I'm always on locations, different places of the country, which I really enjoy. Like being in Pittsburgh was great. And I shot in Chicago for Straight Talk, you know, and we were up in Sacramento for Digstown. And so I get a lot of places, and so I get to be around real people, real Americans, you know, not Hollywood, New York, both of which are also real, but, you know, they're a little more sophisticated about being around celebrities. You know, they see them on a daily basis in restaurants and shooting on the streets and movies and stuff. But you go up to Sacramento, or you're you know, you're in a place like Pittsburgh, you know, real sort of homegrown Americans, you know, get a chance to respond, and it's amazing to me how much the media and even our industry misunderstands the populace at large in this country, how sophisticated they really are in terms of their appreciation of what you do. I mean, the people in Pittsburgh, for example, I mean, I can't say enough nice things about them because they're, I mean, they're amazingly well-read. You know, they know more about cinema than some casting directors. I mean, I've talked to studio people who don't know. I mean, when Billy Crystal at the Oscars this year made the joke about my daughter, my sister, my daughter, my sister, you know, and like
Faye Dunaway.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway, like, you know, nobody in the audience got that he was talking about Chinatown, you know, one of the finest pictures made in the past 30 years, you know, I mean, like, and this is the Academy sitting there, you know, so that gets you a little nervous. Whereas the people in Pittsburgh or something, I mean, they always come up to me to answer your question, and they say, you know, we really love your work. We so appreciate that you did Bill W. and Promise and Salvador and Onion Field. I mean, they get that you're out here doing something beyond entertainment, and that it's really, you know, a lifelong kind of mission to not only to entertain, but to educate and enlighten and to move emotionally, you know, the audience. And they get it all. And I say, well, what do you think when you read, you know, that I was born in Neptune and, you know, have 4 heads, you know, and, you know, some piece of trash and so on. They go, well, we know that's all. I mean, they get it more than anybody else. You know, they get that it's just all junk, and, you know.
You describe your own childhood, at least up to a point, as Rockwell-esque.
Yes, well, it was actually. I had. We have a very close-knit family. My brother and myself and my mom. My father, God rest his soul, died when I was 12, and my brother was 2 1/2. But he used to like make my mom breakfast in bed on Sundays, his one day off, and we all used to go. In fact, my film company is called Breakheart Films. We're producing the HBO thing, and people say, "Oh, why is that?" As usual, you know, why does that mean? Because you're a heartbreaker? And I go, no, numbnuts, no. It's because when I was a kid, we always used to go filming in a place called Breakheart Brook, that was in Breakheart State Park in Rhode Island, and it's just happy memories that my dad and I would go fishing, and my mom and my grandmother and my little brother used to go and get blueberries and would, you know, have trout and blueberry pie for dinner, you know, and it was like really sort of idyllic and wonderful time.
This psychology from a distance is always risky in terms of accuracy and insufferable sometimes when people just kind of glibly do it. So let me glibly do it. There are 3 or 4 incidents that people point to in some of the stuff that I've read. Your father dying, obviously, had great regard for your dad.
Right.
Then you witnessed a friend killed in a car accident.
When I was 10, yes.
And then shortly after that, or a few years after that, there was a thing where your arm went through a window and you severed some arteries. They thought you might lose the arm.
Yes.
And the speculation is that dashed your dream to become a surgeon.
Well, that's true, yes.
Now, collectively, did all these things change your worldview, or are they just things that happen and they could happen to anybody?
Oh, I think, no. I think any... I think there are 2 types of people in the world. Well, 3 types of people in the world. There are the very few who have had very loving, close-knit families, no traumas whatsoever, and grow up to be really, truly productive, loving, family-oriented, work-oriented people. You know, Freud said, what do you need to be happy? Arbeiten und lieben, to work and to love. Then there are those people who have been disregarded by their families. They're either children of like early divorce or from alcoholic families or abusive families and so on, and who don't have a role model for love and so on. And that in and of itself is so debilitating that I don't think they ever have a sense of what it means to really love another human being and to build a career. You know, in other words, there's no role model for that. There's no sense of self-worth. Then there's a 3rd category, like myself and many people who are very achievement-oriented and are successful in life, in both relationships and work and so on, but may have problems that will come up because they come from a very good, close-knit, loving family, of very good moral values, which I did, and I'm very proud of them and proud of that, you know, that I came from that background, who had inexplicable traumas. I mean, you know, my best friend was killed in front of me, got hit by a car, you know. I mean, that's a tough thing when you're 10 years old, and then your dad dying and so on. So what it is you have a kind of almost post-traumatic stress syndrome that sort of sits inside you, which is that you really know that you have a basic foundation of love and achievement and self-esteem, but you're a little wary that the other shoe may drop from time to time.
The arbitrariness of things.
And I mean, as a quick sort of armchair profile of me, I'd say that I'm a person who is very good in friendships. I mean, I'm known among my friends for being an extremely loyal person. And I mean, I say that with no modesty whatsoever. It's something like incredibly proud of. I am devoted. I'm one of those people who has a lot of old friends. I mean, I had this woman once who was a very bad person and a liar and so on, real pathological, awful person. And she never had old friends. It was always new friends. She was always making a new series of friends because she couldn't catch up to her lies in time and so on. I think those of us who are pretty happy and healthy have like really long-standing friendships, you know, and I like being kind and good to people. On the other hand, I'm pretty wary sometimes of new people until I figure them out. Because, you know, and I think this comes from having had those traumas, you know, it's just a little leery of you know, what a person's about. Because a lot of times you can be, especially people in our situation, I mean, let's face it, we're, unfortunately, for being public figures, people, for example, think we're rich, which we aren't, you know. I mean, our money is so public and known, and there are so many sort of taxes and commissions and so on, that we're never as rich as we think we are, but people always sort of think you should pay double for things.
Mm-hmm.
How long is this tie? Can I ask you a question?
It's incredible. You know what? Thank you.
How long is this?
Thank you.
Look at this thing.
This actually brings me to a point I've been meaning to make. The wardrobe guy.
You're blocking my light, by the way.
Oh, sorry. A man by the name of, how rude. A man by the name of Dale Richards, whom I admire greatly. He's one of the best in the business. He assures me each time I put on this tie, doesn't matter, because they won't see it. It'll just fold into your lap. No, in real life, we won't let you wear it, but on the show, it doesn't matter.
Johnny Wad could wear that tie. And okay? First of all,
as a matter of fact, he bequeathed it to me.
I'm sure he has great taste, but I think it's a kimono that you thought was a tie. If you unwrap it, it probably has arms and legs and everything.
Dale, Mr. Woods wants to borrow your scissors.
This won't hurt at all. Johnny Watt didn't have a problem with this, and the grill is still safe, so hold on. Okay? How's that for continuity, all right?
Very nice. See you tomorrow night.
Did I get anything else?
Thank you for watching Cleveland Live Music. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button. There's further patronage information in the video descriptions below. Thanks for all the support and making the channel grow.